Hey guys, Miss Glass here back again. We are continuing our discussion of simple sentences. We have already discussed that simple sentences contain a subject and a verb and that they create an independent clause. We've also talked about infinitives. Those are our two verbs like to sleep, to eat, or to be. Today we are going to talk about prepositions. So prepositions, go ahead and say that word to yourself one time. Prepositions are words that show location of time or space. And I know that sounds a little confusing. When we say location of time, we mean phrases like during March, in the spring, or after dinner that tell us when in time something took place. We can also look at physical space. So that's like saying on, in, or beside the table. Okay. The prepositional phrase is the whole phrase. So in these examples, during is the preposition and during March is the whole prepositional phrase. Again, beside is the preposition and beside the table is the whole prepositional phrase. Okay. I'd like to remember the sentence, a bee flies blank the jar. Any word that goes inside the blank is a preposition, usually saying location in space. But let's look at some examples. So imagine you actually have a jar or a bottle and there's a bee flying around. You want to ask yourself, where can the bee go in relationship to the jar? So the bee can go over the jar, under the jar, around the jar. It could go inside the jar. It could come outside the jar. It could fly along the jar. If the jar was empty on this side, it could go through the jar. So any word that goes in that blank space is a preposition. We do have some exceptions, like the word with. The bee can't fly with the jar because the jar doesn't fly, but the bee can fly with another bee or with a butterfly. So with is still a preposition. Other exceptions are words like of, about, and for. And again, you don't have to memorize these, but this is just an overview of prepositions so that you can recognize them in a sentence because they are part of an independent clause. Okay, the one that can be a little confusing is the preposition to. So we can say the bee flies to the jar, which is totally normal, but you have to watch out for that word to because it also can be an indicator of an infinitive. So if we look at these examples carefully, we have we went to the park. The park is a location, so that makes to a preposition, not part of an infinitive. Sarah and Emily drove to the movies. Same thing, the movies is a place, so that makes this a prepositional phrase, to the movies. The kids went to sleep at 8. Sleep is a verb, so that means that to sleep is an infinitive, not a preposition. The movie felt like it was never going to end. Is that an infinitive or a preposition? Hopefully you said it is a verb, so therefore to end is an infinitive. Okay, last thing to know about prepositional phrases is that sometimes when they come at the beginning of a sentence, you have to be careful. What do you notice in all four of these sentences after the prepositional phrase at the beginning? Hopefully you can see that all the sentences have a comma after the prepositional phrase at the beginning of the sentence. You want to make sure to put a comma in there so you can separate the prepositional phrase from the subject and the verb. The prepositional phrase can't be a subject or a verb, so you need to make sure you have that information in your sentence after the prepositional phrase at the beginning. Okay, let's do some practice. We're going to identify our subjects, verbs, infinitives, and prepositions. Number 1, after the assembly, the students and parents walked to their cars and drove home. Do you see any prepositional phrases? There are 2. We have one right at the beginning, after the assembly, and the other one is to their cars. Their cars is a location, so we know it's a prepositional phrase. Do we have any infinitives in this sentence? No infinitives. Now we're going to find our verbs. We have walked and drove home. Who walked and drove? The students and parents. Number 2, Josie and Marcia wanted to visit their grandma before the holiday. Do we have any prepositional phrases? We do. There's one. Oh, let's do the infinitive first, to visit, and the prepositional phrase is before the holiday. And if we're looking for the verb, we can see it's not the infinitive. Wanted, who wanted? Josie and Marcia. Number 3, during the storm, the playground will be closed. Do we see any infinitives? No, not in this sentence. What about prepositional phrases? There is one. During the storm, and because it comes at the beginning of the sentence, we want to make sure we add what? A comma. Good. Then we can find our verb or verb phrase. Will be closed. What will be closed? The playground. Number 4, the girls did not want to go to the dance with the boys. Let's find our prepositional phrases first. I see here we have the word to twice. Here it says to the dance. The dance is a place, so that's going to be a prepositional phrase. And remember, with is one of those hard ones to remember, but with the boys is another prepositional phrase. Here we have to go, to plus a verb. So that means we have a infinitive. Looking for the verb phrase. Did not want. Who did not want? The girls did not want. Okay, remember, not every sentence will have a preposition or a prepositional phrase, and that is okay. But when you do see them in a sentence, they are part of the independent clause. All right, quick vocabulary review. We have our subject, our verb, our independent clause, verb phrases, and infinitives, which you've learned about before. Today we added on prepositions, words that indicate location in space or time. Prepositional phrases is the phrase that begins with a preposition, and then comma, which is a symbol in writing which indicates a pause, and that is the symbol for a comma. Okay, now you can go, you want to remember that infinitives, prepositions, and prepositional phrases won't necessarily be in every sentence. Make sure you don't confuse them with the subject and verb. They are part of an independent clause. Okay, now you can go on to your prepositions, prepositional phrase practice. And when you're feeling ready, your simple sentence part 1 final quiz.